All right, good evening. Once again, from the Ernsthausen Performing Arts Center at Norwalk High School, I am Eric Rogers, and I welcome you to the 2023 Norwalk City Schools Prospective School Board Members Debate between Mr. Dwayne Moore, Mr. Eric Gonzalez, Mrs. Kayla Burkett, and Mr. Sean Taylor, who is unfortunately not able to join us tonight. So these four candidates are vying for 2 available spots on our school board for the Norwalk City Schools. The debate will last for 1 hour. Each candidate will be granted an opening statement about themselves and their intentions for being on the school board. Then each candidate will take questions provided by the public in advance of tonight's debate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer each question. Each candidate will take turns answering the questions first. Finally, each candidate will give their final statements on their candidacy. Once again, there will be no verbal or other auditory interruptions by anyone in attendance, including the candidates, to allow each candidate to speak uninterrupted. Let's begin by welcoming each candidate tonight, Mr. Dwayne Moore, Mr. Eric Gonzalez, and Mrs. Kayla Burkett. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To begin, please give your opening statements about yourself and your candidacy. We will begin with Mr. Gonzalez.
All right, good evening. So first, I feel like I have an obligation to recognize and acknowledge Mr. Taylor's absence tonight. So as I understand, Mr. Taylor has a work obligation. And I don't know much about Mr. Taylor, but apparently he is a police officer in Milan. So I feel like his absence here is entirely acceptable. You know, we'll be here, we'll be talking about the school board, we'll be talking about all the reasons why we think it's important to support our schools, but we also need to support our police officers and just know that I support Mr. Taylor's absence. So that being said, who am I? I am Mr. Eric Gonzalez, and I am running for a seat on Norwalk City School District's Board of Education. A little bit about me. I am a proud graduate of Norwalk City Schools. I graduated in 2001. And the distinction of my class is we were actually the last class to graduate from the old high school, what is now the Main Street School. And so we didn't get a chance to enjoy these beautiful surroundings, but I'm proud to say my son actually goes here and he does get a chance to enjoy this school. So Norwalk has given me so much. In fact, when I was a sophomore in Norwalk High School, I met my wife, Ms. Desiree Gonzalez. She's here tonight. So we are high school sweethearts, have been married for 17 years and have 2 kids, actually. Kingston Gonzalez, who comes here, he is a freshman. In fact, he's got a soccer game tomorrow. We'll be there rooting on the Truckers, hopefully to a W. We also have a daughter, Lillian, who is in 6th grade. And she made me tell you this. She does dance and she does horseback riding, and she takes a back seat to nobody. So I want to make sure everybody hears that. Make sure you get that online too, all right? So why am I running for Norwalk City School District Board of Education? I believe there are at least 3 reasons I'd like to share with you. One, I feel like I was created to serve. Serving isn't just something I do, isn't just something I talk about, but I feel like at my core, I was created to serve. In fact, I think we all were. It's one of the reasons why I serve as a human resources officer at the Department of Veterans Affairs. One of the real privileges, one of the real honors of my life is to get to serve veterans who served overseas. And I'll tell you, even in human resources, where we don't exactly see patients face to face every day, we don't provide patient care, but we have an impact on the culture. In fact, I have a team, and every day I tell my team, we create the conditions where the best care anywhere is possible. We are the ones who monitor who's coming and going. We are the ones who support those who work for veterans. We are the ones who, in my opinion, set the culture for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I say that to you because there's so much that I've learned as a human resources officer, excuse me, that I feel like will apply to being a school board member. See, I think supporting soldiers has led me to some skills that will also help me in supporting students. So serving is at my core, but it's not just serving. I am deeply passionate of serving students. In fact, it's one of the reasons why for at least the last 5 years, I've been serving as a youth pastor at the chapel right here in Norwalk. It's a great privilege to have a window, to have a vehicle, to be a part of students' lives. They invite me in, they tell me their triumphs, they tell me their victories, they tell me their struggles, and I get to be a part of walking them through that day by day, struggle by struggle, triumph by triumph. And so serving students is at my core. It's not just at church, but it's also even right here in Norwalk City School District. For the last several years, I've gotten to serve as a basketball coach at the middle school. Tough job, let me just say that, tough job, a middle school basketball coach, but I have loved every minute. Seeing these students grow, seeing them progress, not just athletically, but even mentally, has been a great privilege. I've also had opportunities here, even at Norwalk High School, to be involved in Team Leadership Corps. I got a chance to be a keynote speaker as they put on their mental health day, and just to sort of float around and hear the conversations and be around students. I am deeply passionate about serving our students. But maybe the reason that I'm running above all else is because I have a deep, deep personal commitment to Norwalk City Schools and to education in general. See, I'm someone who wasn't born with a silver spoon. I'm someone who doesn't come from a background where everything was handed to me. In fact, I would tell you even tonight, I come from a home where neither one of my parents graduated from high school. So my mom dropped out of school actually when she was in 11th grade, when she got pregnant with my oldest brother. My dad, believe it or not, dropped out of school in 3rd grade so that he could help his family take care of his brothers and sisters. And that's not just the end of my story. You can imagine growing up in a house where your parents didn't graduate from high school. The job opportunities, the job prospects aren't exactly great. So growing up was much a struggle for us. And to make matters worse, when I was in middle school, in Norwalk Middle School, my dad was sent off to prison. Here's the reality of my story. It's more likely that I would be in prison myself. It's more likely that I would be in jail than to be up on this stage talking to you about why I'm passionate about running for a seat on the Board of Education. But God had a different plan. God did some crazy big things in my life, and because of those things, education being one of them, I get to stand here and live a life that is entirely different from the one that I started living when I was a student. So I'm deeply passionate about education. I'm passionate about the way it's changed my life, and I'm passionate about the trajectory it can set our students on for the future. So my name is Eric Gonzalez, and I am running for a seat on Norwalk City School District's Board of Education. Thank you.
And we'll continue with Mrs. Burkett.
Hello, my name is Kayla Burkett. I am a Norwalk City School District alumni. Been here for 25 years. My husband and I moved back because we love the community. We love Norwalk City School District, and we just had our first child. So we are excited to be sending her to the Norwalk City School District and be raised a trucker just like us. I also am an aunt of 3 kids that are in the school district currently, a kindergartner, a 4th grader, and a 7th grader. Education is extremely important to me. I am a school psychologist, so I don't have, the teaching background, but as a school psychologist, I do know a lot about education law, ethics in education, best practice systems, that kind of stuff. With that, I'm currently a school psychologist at Sandusky City Schools. I was previously at Clyde Green Springs, so there was a big change there in population, but I got to see it all. I got to see how both systems operated, how to benefit a diverse, range of students. And then I also had field work during grad school at Bellevue and Fremont. So again, big difference in populations. With that, I was an administrator. I am an administrator. So I get to see how the school board impacts the school from the administrative side. I've seen a lot of good things that have been done. Ultimately, there are many reasons that I'm running, but I believe that I have the experience, the knowledge, and the skills to make a positive impact, not only in Norwalk City School District, but in our community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Moore.
Hello, my name is Dwayne Moore. As many of you know, I've been involved with Norwalk Schools for many years. I've been involved with education. Well, when I added up tonight, it seemed like almost 70 years, from kindergarten all the way up to today. I've been involved with something, either in school or teaching. I've been involved with teaching at Norwalk for 30 years. Firelands for 18 years. I have a degree in administration, curriculum, computers, and mathematics. And so using that, I feel that I have the tools to at least give some advice to the board and work with the board. While at Norwalk, I served as the junior high football coach, head tennis coach, and that's when we didn't have the nice tennis courts either. And also the assistant baseball coach. I was part of the board here that actually brought Eric on board here. I think that was one of the best decisions that we ever made as a board. In the past, our board has, I don't want to say dysfunctional, but there have been always problems. There's this little bickering. And I want to point out that our board right now is unified. They are super, and I'm very proud to be a part of this board. And I'm looking forward that if you would put me back on again, to be another part of it. And, you know, I don't want to break up something that's going great. Another thing that we did that I'm very proud of, Mr. Richard Thaler is sitting out there, and he did it with us. And that was we hired Mr. Cooley as our superintendent. That is the best move that this board could ever have made, and the wisest move. We have the best superintendent. Joyce, our treasurer, is second to none. Our staff at the high school, all the principals, teachers, everybody. I feel we have the top district in the whole area, and the whole staff in the whole area too. And I want to keep it that way. So if you please vote for me again, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so now we will move on to the question portion of the day, the debate. Again, these questions were submitted by members of the public. So this time we will begin with Mrs. Burkett. So Mrs. Burkett, first question is for you. So what would be your major goals for your term?
I guess the major goals for my term is to use data-based decision-making. I mean, schools have funds that come in, public tax dollars that we use to make a lot of decisions. I want to analyze, what the community needs, what our family needs, what our district needs, what our resources are, what they could be, and just be smart with our resources, but use the data to support any financial decisions that are made. That's it, I think.
All right, same question for you, Mr. Moore. So what are your major goals for this term?
Okay, probably the main major goal would be this new school that we're looking at. We had our first meeting last night. The executive committee has been meeting with Gorman Miller. That's been my goal for a long time. My wife, who's here, has taught in the elementary schools. She taught at Maplehurst, along with Mr. Richard Thaler there, where it was plain hell up on the third floor. I mean, hot. It was hot. And so, that's one of my goals is to get that building. My other goal is to continue the working relationship that this board has with our administration. In the past, it hasn't been there. I'm not going to name names, but it just wasn't there. And I feel that now we have the working relationship. I want to continue it, and I want to make the Norwalk schools again the best in the state. And I was thinking today about the Ohio State slogan about being the best damn band in the land. I want us to be the best damn school in the land. So thank you.
And finally, Mr. Gonzalez, your goals for this term?
Yeah, so I would say it this way. So my goal would be to create the conditions where our students can become the best versions of themselves. And here's what that would look like. Certainly that would include an upgrade of our facilities. But not just that, certainly an upgrade of our facilities would also include making sure our students feel safe and secure. I don't believe you can learn in an environment where you don't feel safe and where you don't feel secure. And so I'm happy that we've hired, even during my tenure on the board, Mr. Connie to come in and be our school resource officer. I think that is an important initiative, an important step towards making sure our schools are safe. I don't need to tell you, we live in a world where dangerous people do dangerous things. We as adults have to be the adults in the room and making sure that we're ensuring the safety of our students. We also have to make sure that our students feel psychological safety. Again, with social media and some of the pressures that are on our students, it is a different world than many of us grew up in. And so adding counselors, adding social workers, adding people who can help our students with navigating the difficulties and challenges of the day, I think is incredibly important. But I think we have got to continue to add programmatic sort of features that set us apart as a district from other districts. You know, I was ecstatic to see what we did with theater and with arts, now having that available at younger schools or at younger ages in middle school and the like. I think those programs are important. I was ecstatic to see what we did with the makerspace at the middle school. I think it's really important that we invest in engineering, we invest in STEM, we invest in our students. But we also have to be looking towards the future. What's next? What's next on the horizon that our students need to be prepared for when they leave our doors? You know, so I think about virtual reality and AI, things I don't know that we've stepped into as of yet, but those are the things that I think we need to be thinking of to prepare our students for the world that awaits them. Thanks.
All right, next question. Number 2, we will begin this time with Mr. Moore. So, Mr. Moore, currently, what is the most pressing issue the Norwalk City School District is facing, and how are you addressing it?
Well, I think one of the pressing issues, and we have personally saw part of it, and that is the school security. With all the schools that are, even the elementary levels that are getting broken into. We did hire Mr. Connie. I would like to hire more, but the finances just weren't there for that. But eventually with this new school that we hope to have, we'll be down to 2 buildings across from each other, and he will be there. The other pressing issue would be with this ESSER money that was given to us by the state and the federal government. You know, I want to thank them for that. You know, it really came in handy. We hired a lot of aides, a lot of teachers, and I'm afraid that when that money runs out, that we're going to have to scramble, but there's ways of getting around that again, that we can maybe compensate for that. And so that would be one issue that I'm looking forward to solving.
All right, same question. This time we will go with Mr. Gonzalez. Your response. So what is the pressing issue facing the Norwalk City Schools, and how would you address it?
Yeah, so I think one of the major issues we're faced with is our aging infrastructure. I mean, League Street School is probably almost 100 years old. You look at Pleasant Street School, you look at Maplehurst. These schools are not in a state, I think, that represents our city well. Not only that, but it does put our students in danger. In fact, I was here yesterday just talking to a teacher, and there are literally students that show up to school during the hottest days of the summer and get sick because they can't learn in an environment that is conducive to learning. Not just that, but the teachers themselves have limitations because of those buildings are not equipped for 22nd century learning. And so I think we've got to do something about that as a community. The reality is our students here in Norwalk deserve world-class education. I'm not sure we're providing world-class education with some of the buildings that we're teaching in. And so what I'm doing about that, in fact, I was just here yesterday, right, in the room right next door to us, looking at what do we do about this problem? How do we solve this problem? How do we analyze the options and the steps that it would take to, in fact, build that building right across the street from this very room? So I think as a community, Norwalk, we can do better. I think as a community, our students deserve better. And I think if we come together and do better, they have a future that is better than any of us can imagine. So I think that's our number one issue, and I think that's what we've got to focus on.
All right, and Mrs. Burkett. So again, same question. What is the pressing issue for our city schools, and how would you address them?
So I've been gathering some community input, and large feedback has been poor communication to families, poor communication between buildings. And so I feel in order to have an effective school system, we have to be able to communicate appropriately, right? All of these things can't be made possible if we're not communicating the big plan. What is it going to look like? It's hard to get support for a new system if, there's not buy-in from the community. So we need to work towards fixing that communication issue. How do we do that? Getting more people to come to board meetings and participating, more communication with board members, more communication with teachers, just making it open and honest, and being accepting of criticism and feedback, because we all should be working towards the same thing.
All right, excellent. All right, question number 3. This time we will begin with Mr. Gonzalez. Third question. This has already been brought up once tonight. So how would you make the case to the public to support building a new school?
Yeah, so I would likely offer you some of the things that I've just recounted, but even to take those further, again, if you've been to Lee Street School, if you've been to Maplehurst, if you've been to Pleasant Elementary, there are literally trailers out there that we're educating our students in. Trailers that aren't well heated, trailers that are not an environment that any of us would be proud of. In fact, when I drive by those schools, there's a moment where I hang my head just a moment. Because I can see kind of what that would do to a student to walk into a trailer to be educated. To me, it makes no sense. I think we can do better than that. I think we've tolerated that for far too long as a community. And I think it's time. The time for action is now. We have this space and time where there's going to be funding available that we can access. And I think we as the adults in the room have to do the right thing to ensure the future of our students. And so it's up to us. I think we can do it. I think we will do it. And I look forward to the day it gets done.
And we'll go now to Mrs. Burkett. So Mrs. Burkett, same question. How do you make the case to the public to support a new school building?
As somebody in education, I think a new school building, especially if we can have all of the grades together or more of the grades together, is going to make things a lot more efficient from the educator's perspective. You can have teachers that are on the same page throughout the grade levels. You can have better curriculum alignment, so that way students who receive instruction in first grade are completely prepared for instruction in second grade. You shouldn't have those gaps. Sometimes there's different expectations from one building to the next. That goes the same with behavior. If you have one school that's implementing one behavior system, but you go to the next school and there's a different set of expectations, a different set of language, that's an issue. And with poor behavior comes more gaps in our academic skills. So having one building with more grades in it is going to help that. From a community aspect, again, back to the communication. It's easier to communicate, if a sibling goes home sick, the secretary can let that other sibling know. And we all have seen the traffic issues with all the multiple buildings, having to drop your kid off at Maplehurst and then running across town to drop the other one off at Pleasant, and the traffic backup with that. So there are a lot of positives and benefits that come from having a new facility for our school district.
All right, and lastly, Mr. Moore, how would you get the public support?
Okay, like I said, we had our first meeting last night. I'm on the task committee that met with, I'd say 40 or 50 public people, teachers last night. And this issue was brought up. There are several reasons why I'm in favor of the school. Number one is you're going to get all of the teachers together in one building. They can talk to each other and kind of relay what's going on from grade level to grade level. Another thing is parents. You only have one building to drop our kids off to. You don't have to go to 4 and 5 buildings if you come to middle school. You only have one PTO. These schools that we have too have to be updated, with the electricity. Some of them only have 2 plugs in a room. It's impossible to plug in 2 or more things at one time. You have to unplug something, plug something else in, and it's just a fiasco. And I think another thing is too, the new school will be air conditioned. As far as I'm concerned, these kids this year even, for that 2 or 3 weeks the school started, you lost education. I mean, those kids were not in tune with you. People will say they are, but when you get that temperature, and at the end of school too, when they, back in May or June, when it gets real hot, you might as well turn the plug off on the wall. And with air conditioning, it will definitely help them. It'll help them educationally, it'll help them emotionally, and with the mental health, which I'm a big fan of also. Thank you.
All right. Next question. Question number 4. This time we will lead off with Mrs. Burkett. Mrs. Burkett, this has kind of become more of a statewide and nationally discussed topic. So, do you support public funding for private schools?
Personally, I do not. I think if you choose to go to a private school, that should be funded either through scholarships or through your family. Public schools do not have enough funding to keep up with the needs. our needs for our students are like ever growing. We see more and more students who are homeless. We have more and more students who have food insecurities, and we need those funds to support those students. That's all. Thank you.
And then we'll jump back to Mr. Moore. So your response to that question. So do you support public funding for private schools?
Well, I guess I'm caught between a rock and a hard place in this one, because my daughter's 3 children are both going to one of the top private schools up near Chagrin Falls. And my one granddaughter told me when she went to college, she says it's actually easier coming from the private school. I feel that we can do the same thing at Norwalk High School. Private schools will have to be a personal choice. And I realize that we have St. Paul's here in town, and it's an excellent school system. And again, that's up to them. We have a couple of Christian schools down here at Calvary Baptist. You know, they do a good job. And so I would like to see everybody come to the public schools. But I realize that for some reason, parents want to put them in a private school. That's up there. I am against vouchers, though. I will go on record for that. I do not feel that we should just give the parents a voucher and say, here, take it wherever you want. To me, I think that's ruining our system. And again, you know, I think we have the staff right now from K through 12 to compete with the private schools in the area here.
All right, and finally, Mr. Gonzalez, same question. So do you support public funding for private schools?
Yeah, so I am a proponent of providing parents with choices. So parents have ultimate responsibility to determine where their kids should be educated. If they find that education is best at a school that's not public, then I suppose that's their choice. But what my focus would be on as a board member would be on making sure that Norwalk is as best as it can possibly be. And when I think about all of the offerings that we have here and available, offerings to students with special needs, offerings to students who English isn't their first language, offerings athletically. I think we are competing with not just other private schools, but other public schools, other districts. And I think in Norwalk, we are competing quite well. We need to make sure we're continuing to compete off into the future.
All right, next question, number 5. This time we will begin with Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, when a divisive issue is presented to the school board, such as critical race theory, book banning, or sex education, how will you weigh the voices of parents, students, and the professional staff in our district?
Okay, first of all, I think you have to look at what the duty of the school board member really is. Basically, our job as a school board member is, number 1, to hire the superintendent, number 2, to hire the treasurer, number 3, to develop and administer school policy. So if that issue came up, I think that we'd have to look at what the school policy says, and then we would have to go on the advice of our superintendent and our school administrators. That's what we hired them for. And I feel that, you know, like I said, we have a good staff, an excellent superintendent that will look out for the students. You know, Mr. Cooley's been here for 20-some years, and he's a true trucker, and he's not going to bring us anything to the board that's going to be detriment to the students. So when that comes up, I think we're going to have to get together, maybe have some committees with parents, talk to them, but we are not to just rubber stamp what the parents want with regard to that. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gonzalez, same question for you. So when faced with a divisive issue to the school board, such as critical race theory, book banning, or sex education, how would you weigh the voices of parents, students, and professional staff for the district?
Yeah, so I would agree with Dwayne and some of his comments. The reality is we ask teachers to do a tough job. It's not easy to educate our students, but the truth of the matter is there will always be some divisive issue. Common Core was divisive when it first came out. Critical race theory is the next thing. There will likely be something else next year. But I believe and trust in our professionals here in our district. I believe that they have the best interests of our students at heart. And I think that when given the choice, they're going to do the right thing for students. And so my confidence would be placed on the people we put in positions to make these types of decisions.
And Mrs. Burkett, same question for you. So when faced with a divisive issue, such as critical race theory, book banning, or sex education, how do you weigh the voices of parents, students, and professional staff?
So as a board member, we're elected. So in my opinion, we work for the community. There's a system of checks and balances. Obviously, we hire somebody that we trust, both in the treasurer position and in the superintendent position. But I do feel like it is important to get feedback from the community about what their thoughts are, the pros and cons, how, their students might benefit from some of these things, what might be a disadvantage to some of these things that I presented. And form committees. I think that's a wonderful idea, to form committees that work, get the educator's perspective, get the community's perspective, and really talk out what should happen and benefits our community, Norwalk City School District, the best.
All right. And question number 6, this time we will lead off with Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, how do you address misinformation that is shared in person or on social media?
Wow, that never happens, does it? Misinformation, social media, I don't know what you're talking about. So I guess you just have to address those things sort of head on. Now, I'm never going to be a person who sort of advocates a certain point online in the comments or something to that effect. I don't believe it's a meaningful dialogue when you have it on Facebook or on Instagram or any of the social media platforms. I do believe in conversation. There's going to be times when people disagree. I think smart people can disagree on a particular issue. But here's what I would say, though. We can disagree on what's best for students, but we shouldn't disagree on the fact that what's best for students is best. And so I think we always have to have our students in mind, whatever it is we may be disagreeing with. It's not about what I want, not about what administrators want, maybe not even about what parents want. But at the end of the day, what's the best thing for our students? That should be our main focus. That should be our main goal. And I think that has to be our aim, no matter what the issue may be discussing.
All right. And same question, Mrs. Burkett, your turn. So again, how would you address misinformation that is shared in person or on social media?
Similarly, we want to have conversations, maybe if there is a disconnect in communication, again, a big thing for tonight apparently. But if there's a disconnect between communication or communication breakdown, then we need to address that, see where, somebody may have misinterpreted something, work backwards, and then hopefully get on the same page moving forward.
All right, and we'll finish this question with Mr. Moore. So again, how would you address misinformation shared online or in person?
Okay, first of all, I don't think that the school board members should be going out and discussing school board matters on Facebook, anything like this. If there's a problem with the public, I feel that the public should go through the chain of command. Go to the teacher first, the principal second, the superintendent. Then if it doesn't work, then approach the school board. But I do not think that school board should be approached on Facebook. They can come to a school board meeting and we could discuss it then. Or if it qualifies to be an executive session, then we could discuss it then. But if there's a problem there, the public, again, should discuss it with the school officials. And again, we should not be going out and telling what's going on. I realize that the public wants us to be transparent. You cannot be transparent on everything. We could be transparent on this new school, on what we need, why we need it. But if there's something going on discipline-wise with a student, or something that's going on that the public thinks that we should have done, we should not be discussing it on Facebook, and I'm dead set against it. Thank you.
All righty, final question. Now, these are somewhat aimed to each of you individually. So this time we will lead off with Mr. Burkett. Mrs. Burkett, how are you preparing yourself professionally in order to bring value to the school board? And what educational resources or people do you rely on to help formulate your perspective?
So I'm in education. I have a license, so I have to take continuing education courses in order to maintain that license. I lean on Ohio operating standards. I lean on Ohio revised code. I visit the ODE website probably daily. So I lean on the people who, have professional, have been professionally developed in their area. I reach out to community, whoever is the most professional that can address the situation is who I'm going to reach out to.
All right. Now, next up, we will go to Mr. Moore. So, Mr. Moore, different question for you. So, having served on the board, what areas are you needing to grow professionally in order to bring greater value to the school board? And what educational resources or people do you rely on to help formulate your perspective?
Okay, first of all, I have learned quite a bit in the last 4 years as a board member. And then one thing I want to point out is I intend to improve myself. I will be attending the Ohio School Board Association Conference in Columbus in November. They have it every year for 3 years. They have seminars on how to improve different parts of the school, different things that you can institute. As far as building a building, they have people down there that you can go to. And I rely a lot on our administrators to go by what they want to do for the system. As far as the growing, like I said before, I have a degree in administration, and I have a degree in curriculum, and I feel that I can be an asset to our system with that.
All right. And same question for you, Mr. Gonzalez. So, after serving on the board, what areas are you needing to grow professionally in order to bring greater value to the school board? And what educational resources or people do you rely on to help formulate your perspective?
Yeah, so I'll tell you one of the things I did upon joining the school board is I actually met with our treasurer, Joyce DuPont. We had a great conversation. She walked me through the budget. She walked me through some legislative proposals. She walked me through the things that I needed to know in order to get up to speed as a board member. I did something similar with Mr. Cooley. Again, having a conversation. What are the priorities of the district? Where are the areas we need to focus? What are our weaknesses? What are some areas that we need to shore up? I think those conversations lead to learning, but not just that. You know, every Friday night I'm at football games talking to parents, and I'm asking them what are their concerns? Where are they coming from? What are they seeing that we could be doing better? But also talking to students because they are the ones on the other side of our education. And so I want to know from them, what are they seeing? What are the opportunities? Where could we be making sure that we're not falling behind as a district? I too will be attending the conference in Columbus later in November. I'm on Ohio School Board Association's website constantly, but really it's the things that people are telling me that I think I'm paying most attention to because those are the areas that people are talking about.
Okay. All right. So that concludes the question portion of today's debate. So now we will move on to closing remarks. So we will begin with Mr. Moore.
I want to thank the Norwalk schools for having this debate tonight. And I'd like to congratulate Kayla and Eric on their participation with this. Again, I have been on the board for 4 years. I have enjoyed it. I'm on the EHOVI board, which is a position that is appointed by our board. We must have one representative up there, and I've been on that board, and I have 1 more year left if I make it again for this re-election, and then I have to be reappointed again. Again, I've been in Norwalk here for 50-some years, and I'm a true trucker as far as that goes. My son graduated from Norwalk, played ball for Norwalk. He's a pastor. In fact, he's assistant football coach now. My daughter is a dietitian. Both of them got excellent education here in Norwalk, and I am really proud of what they have begun. And so I would really appreciate it if you would vote for me again so that I can continue the working relationship that this board has with our assistants, with our school superintendent and so forth, and all administrators. It's a working relationship. I don't want to see it end. The board is working together. Like I said, it's the first board in years that has come together and worked together. Again, I'm not going to get into different particulars on that, but again, I think people will go along with that. And last, I just want to thank everybody out there and wherever you are watching this. Thank you for watching this. And I want to say hi to my family because I know they're watching this tonight. So thank you.
All right, and we'll jump to Mr. Gonzalez, your closing remarks for tonight.
Yeah, so again, I want to say thank you to you, Eric, for moderating this tonight. Also, thank you to our audience here for showing up on a Wednesday night. I'm sure there's some other things you could have been doing, so I appreciate you coming out. So What is it that sets me apart? Why vote for me? So one of the things I think I offer is a unique perspective. I think my job at the Department of Veterans Affairs offers me a unique perspective. I have a team of about 700 people, and I feel deep responsibility for those 700 people. Day in and day out, I have those 700 people on the top of my mind. What are the barriers? What are the challenges? What can I be doing as a leader to make sure that they are equipped to do the job that I'm asking them to do? I think that helps me as a board member. I think it helps me to have a unique perspective. I manage a budget, believe it or not, of over $100 million. And when I think about what our school, a new school might entail, I think that experience of managing that budget will certainly go a long way towards creating the conditions where I feel like the best education can be possible for our students. So I think that leadership, leading at a high level, lends itself well towards being a board member and offers me a unique perspective. But it's not just that. I'm also privileged to be a youth pastor. I'm privileged to have a window. I'm privileged to have a relationship with so many students. They trust me to have conversations. They trust me with information. And it's a trust that I take quite seriously. And I think it gives me a unique perspective into how best to shape and influence their education. In fact, even influence their future. I think being a youth pastor gives me a unique perspective. But maybe even more than those things, I think my background, where I come from, what I've done, what I've been a part of, the people I've been privileged to meet along my journey, I think those things give me a unique perspective. See, as a leader, one of the things that I always try to do when I'm making a difficult decision or there's a difficult challenge that I'm being faced with, one of the things I always try to do is get as many voices in the room as possible, get as much feedback as possible, get as many unique perspectives as possible before we make a decision. See, if you elect me as the next member of the Board of Education here in Norwalk, I promise you this, I promise you'll get a unique perspective. And I promise you that I'll do everything I can to make sure Norwalk City School District is in good hands, not just for today, but also for tomorrow. So I hope you'll consider voting for me. Thank you.
And we'll close with Mrs. Burkett.
As I said earlier, I do believe that board members work for the community that votes them in. Building connections between a school district and its community is something that I'm trained in professionally, but it's also something that I'm very passionate about. I know that there can't be 100% transparency all the time. With education, there's a lot of confidentiality. However, I do think it's important to listen to the needs and really look at, what the needs are of our community, of our students, and of our family. With that said, I hope you allow me the opportunity to do what I can to meet the needs of our families, community, and Norwalk City School District. Thank you.
All right, so that closes our debate for tonight. So once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your thoughts on our potential membership on the Norwalk City Schools School Board. Thank you to our audience in person and online for attending. So again, please exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Thank you, have a good evening, and go Truckers.